Welcome to Redtastic. Story 1. I, 45 male, live in my own home. A small 3-bedroom with my son, 18 male. I'm a widower, never remarried, and have dedicated my life to my son since we lost his mom. My cousin, 31 male, recently moved in with me. Now, my house is a small one, a master bedroom for me, my son's room, and a spare room. My cousin, who has been unemployed for some years now and has been living with his parents, got hired as a preschool teacher recently. Following his employment, he decided to move out of his parents' place for freedom, plus they wanted him gone too. So he moved in with me and asked to rent the spare room. I agreed to take him in, and we had a rent bargain below market rate since he's just starting life. 2 months after he moved in, my cousin started paying only a third of the agreed rent. I reminded him of our agreement and told him that I was charging him almost next to nothing, so he was just contributing to utility bills. He claimed that he had decided to start saving for a better apartment and that I should understand that it was harder for him with all the expenses he had to keep up with. I kept my cool even though he barely contributed to other things like groceries and house maintenance. My son had been very understanding and even contributed to the utility bills when he started working after school hours. Although I was upset, I tolerated my cousin for a month, and when he repeated the same thing, I decided I had had enough and insisted he needed to go ASAP. Within this period, my son moved to college. His school was a bit far, so he can only come home on some weekends and during breaks. A few days after I helped my son move into his dorm, my cousin expressed the need to move into my son's bedroom because it's the sensible thing to do and his family. I said a firm no. I told him that it's my son's room. I told him that it's my son's bedroom and that I do not have any desire to rent it out. I like it to remain the way he left it and for him to use it whenever he's home. My cousin was miffed at my decision, but dropped the matter, or so I thought. Then 3 days ago, I came home to find my cousin hauling his stuff into my son's bedroom. I stopped him immediately and threw him out of the house. I also threatened to call the cops on him if he didn't leave my house immediately. When I started rearranging my son's room, I found that my son's Lego collection and Pokemon cards were missing. These are really expensive and my son put them together meticulously over the years. I asked my cousin if he took it and he said he put them up in his classroom because they're unprivileged kids. I told him he better return them because they're not his property and my son doesn't know he took them. He started going on and on about the set and cards being for kids and that my son was a grown man. So I told him he had till the end of the day to bring it back or I'm going to the police. He reported me to his mom, my aunt, and now they're calling me an a-hole for depriving little children of play toys. Am I an ass? Update. My cousin got his mommy dearest to return my son's collection cards and sets when they saw I was not going to fall for their emotional blackmail. He's currently ranting on social media about privileged people and trying to portray himself as the better person, even though he stole from me. I've blocked him on social media and have changed my locks too. No, OP, you're not the a-hole, your cousin is. He's an entitled a-hole and thief. He has no shame and is still behaving like a child. Even your teenage son helps with utility in a house that's pretty much his. But your cousin got his rent lowered with your help and yet he decided to not pay and broke the agreement. Then he decided that he should move into your son's room. His level of entitlement needs to be studied. You did the right thing by blocking him and his folks and changing your locks. Just cut them right out of your life. Story 2. I am a 28-year-old mother of a 3-year-old. And if you are familiar with children, you would know that they tend to play with food during meal times. When this happens to my daughter, I take away her food and would not give it back until 15 minutes passed, no matter how much she cries. When mealtime ends, 1 hour, she gets no food till the next meal, 4 to 6 hours. She has learned to eat properly unless she wants to go hungry, which rarely happens. My sister-in-law dropped by in the morning without warning with her 4-year-old son and asked me to help look after him as she had something urgent to tend to. I couldn't say no since I stay at home anyway and the children could play together. During lunchtime, I realized that this child has terrible table manners on top of being a messy eater. He was stirring his soup, enjoying himself, creating swirls, and my own daughter was copying him. After reminding the both of them to not play with food, my daughter behaved, but the boy didn't, so I took away his food. He kept asking why even after explaining to him. When I gave him his bowl back after 15 minutes, he managed to stuff his cheeks a few mouthfuls before getting distracted again. I took away his food for the second time, and this time he threw a tantrum and refused to eat even when I gave them back to him in another 15 minutes. So I put away the food instead. When my sister-in-law came to collect him in the afternoon, she was furious that I took away her son's food. I told her that I was just using my way to teach children to behave, and she said that it wasn't my job to teach her son. To which I replied that it wasn't my job either to babysit him. He may be upset, but he wasn't hurt or hungry. He had a few mouthfuls for too long since his mother came to collect him. My husband heard of this incident when his sister complained about it to him and agreed that I was too harsh on somebody else's child who wasn't raised like our daughter. I don't think that I'm wrong to enforce a few rules in my own house, but since both of them think that I'm the a-hole, let's just post it here. You're the a-hole, OP, for doing this to a child that isn't yours and was essentially a guest in your home, and for doing this to your child. Every parent has a way of instilling manners into their child, but I don't think your child or any child will learn table manners this way, at least not in a healthy way. You're creating a very unhealthy environment for your child with food. Taking food away as punishment for playing with food. They're kids. Kids play with their food, even adults. You need to talk to a professional about this and go to therapy yourself. It seems like you need help. Now for some comments. You're the a-hole. This might be how you raise your child, though I do think it's a bit harsh to be so strict about a literal toddler playing with her food. But it's not how your sister-in-law raised hers. When you asked the children to stop playing with their food, your daughter complied. Your daughter. If your nephew didn't listen, then whatever, he was only stirring it, not throwing it across the room. Just let them eat, damn. You're the a-hole. Kids learn through play. Insisting that they eat your way and can't experience food in any other way is over-policing. Children should be allowed to explore texture and taste any way they like. It's how they experiment with different foods and learn to appreciate different tastes. It is totally reasonable to train your children not to make a mess at the table. It is totally unreasonable to ban all play. Just because you are the mom doesn't mean you have to suck the fun out of life. Also, taking away a child's food and not returning it, no matter how much she cries, is abusive behavior on your part. You're the a-hole. That child is not yours. Therefore, you are not entitled to parent them with your own ways. Which, by the way, is horrible and starves children of development and fun. You sound like a bad parent and hates to let their children have fun. And starving a child just because they don't listen to you and wanted to have some fun with his cousin and with his food. Sorry, you sound like a horrible aunt to be around. You said he was enjoying his soup and stirring it around, which is completely harmless, not like he dumped it over his head, and you took that enjoyment away from him. Geez, I wouldn't want to have a meal with you. Story 3. Okay, so I'm 19 female and my dad and his wife had been talking about wanting a kid together for a couple years, and last year they finally went through IVF and she's due in June. I'm a full-time uni student. I've been living at home with them, and leading up to their decision, my dad was constantly asking if I was okay with having a sibling. To be honest, I didn't feel it was my place to even say anything. They're a couple, and if they want a kid, then cool. Anyways, about 3-4 months or so ago, my dad started making jokes about delegating the sucky jobs to me, like diaper changing and staying up till the insane hours of the morning with him and babysitting, etc. And I laughed a lot of it off, because he has a very strange sense of humor. But in the last month or so, he started getting annoyed when I did. It wasn't until one day we had a conversation about the baby being a handful, and he said, "Well, since you don't have to pay board and only work 3 days a week, you can just quit your job and babysit so we can have a break." Of course, I thought this was a joke because there is no way he could be serious. But then he got mad and said, "Well, you will have to look after him. He's your brother, and this is how family works." Now, this didn't sit right with me, and so I said, "No, I still have expenses like my phone bill, paying for transport to get to university and work, and the fact that I have a student loan." He didn't really respond and just walked away. Ever since, he's been saying stuff like, "You can afford to take a couple days off uni if we need it, right? And this is what being an adult is about. You look after your family. Don't you love your brother?" I've honestly gotten really sick of the expectation that since they're having a kid, I have to drop everything for it, so they can have a break. I believe once you create that responsibility, you don't get a break for 18 years. And if I wanted to parent a child and put my life on hold, I would have made the same decision my mother did and would have had one at 17. We have a very rocky relationship, if any at all. Till now, I have put my foot down that it's not my kid and not my responsibility. And I'm happy to help out as long as it suits my work and uni schedule. But the rest of my family have started calling me a brat, and that family looks after each other. Since my parents were super young when they had me, they had so much help from my grandparents and aunt that I almost considered myself raised by them rather than my own parents. From this, I kind of feel like my dad's expecting this to happen again with my brother. I always believed I was in the right, but now my entire family is disagreeing with me. Even my aunt, who is always the voice of reason, and now I'm wondering if I am being selfish. Now for some comments. Not the a-hole. I am floored by how many posts I see where a parent decides to have a kid later in life and then has the audacity to assume that their first kid is some sort of built-in parachute. It's like everyone got together and watched 17 kids and counting, or however many kids that poor clown car of a vagina has spat out, and thought it was a great idea to have your older kids raising your younger kids. Not the a-hole. If you have a kid, it's your responsibility to make sure you can care for them. If they were going to rely on you for help, they should have asked you before they got pregnant. It's also really shitty that they expect you to take time off from your studies, putting one child before another. Your parents should always have your best interests at heart, and they're not doing that. If you aren't willing to look after a baby, you shouldn't have a baby. Not the a-hole. It sounds like your dad is asking for help with babysitting. He wants a live-in nanny. His mention of providing you with rent-free is also bogus. Try to advertise for a part-time nanny with free rent and no pay and see how many offers you get. And your dad is trying to have you sacrifice your future so he can abdicate his parental duties. The rest of the family is enabling. Move out. Anyone in your family tells you you should put your future on hold to care for your brother, tell them they could just as easily be a free part-time nanny. After all, aren't we all family?